I speak to you at the moment when the ground beneath you feels unsteady, and the voices around you tell you to run, to hide, to lower your expectations. I see the shaking you feel, the questions rising when what once felt solid begins to crack. Do not mistake the trembling of foundations for the failure of truth. I have not moved, and I have not lost authority. Lift your eyes from what is collapsing and look to me. I remain firm when everything else shifts. Stand where you are. Breathe. This day does not begin in fear but in trust, because I am your refuge when foundations are shaken. When what you relied on begins to tremble, your first instinct is to search for escape. You look for safer ground, quicker answers, easier paths. But I tell you this morning that not every shaking is meant to destroy you. Some shaking reveals what cannot support you any longer. I allow foundations to be tested so that you will not build your life on what cannot endure. I remain steady while structures fail, and I invite you to anchor yourself in me rather than in what once felt secure. I know how unsettling it feels when certainty disappears. Plans unravel, systems fail, people change, trust erodes. You ask yourself how to stand when everything feels unstable. Hear me clearly, you do not stand because the ground is strong. You stand because I am. I am not dependent on circumstances to remain faithful. I am not shaken by what surprises you. When the world shifts, my authority does not. You may hear voices telling you that escape is wisdom, that retreat is safety, that silence is protection. Yet I call you to discernment, not panic. Not every threat requires flight. Not every shaking requires surrender. Sometimes the most powerful act of faith is to remain where you are, grounded in truth, unmoved by fear. I see how fear tries to convince you that instability means danger. Fear exaggerates loss and minimizes strength. It tells you that what is falling apart will take you with it. But I am not bound to what is failing. I am not sustained by broken systems or fragile agreements. When foundations shake, it is an invitation to discover what truly holds you. I have watched you place trust in structures that promise security. Finances, relationships, routines, institutions, expectations. None of these are evil, but none of them are ultimate. When they begin to crack, I do not abandon you to the rubble. I draw your attention upward. I remind you that your safety has never depended on human stability alone. I am not unsettled by injustice. I am not confused by chaos. I am not threatened by resistance. While you see shaking, I see exposure. What cannot stand in truth will eventually reveal itself. What is built on deceit cannot endure pressure. When you trust me, you do not need to panic when false foundations fall. You may feel tempted to compromise your convictions just to regain stability. Pressure often pushes you to lower standards, soften truth, or remain silent when integrity calls you to stand. Resist this temptation. Stability purchased at the cost of truth is fragile. I sustain those who remain upright even when it feels costly. I see how the shaking around you creates inner trembling. Your thoughts race. Your heart tightens. You question your decisions. You wonder if standing firm will cost you too much. Yet standing firm does not mean standing alone. I am with you. I steady you from within. You are not required to shout to prove your faith. Standing firm is often quiet. It is choosing integrity when compromise would bring relief. It is choosing patience when fear demands action. It is choosing trust when evidence feels thin. This kind of firmness does not announce itself, but it is powerful. I know how the shaking tests your perception. You begin to doubt whether truth still matters when lies seem effective. But effectiveness is not endurance. What works for a moment does not last forever. Truth does not rush because it does not fear exposure. It stands. I am not asking you to deny reality. Shaking is real. A loss is real. Uncertainty is real. But reality does not define authority. I do. When you acknowledge what is shaking without surrendering to fear, you stand wisely. I see how instability makes you question my presence. You ask where I am when things fall apart. I am not absent. I am active. I am allowing what is unstable to be revealed, so that what is eternal can be trusted. I do not remove shaking immediately because shaking teaches discernment. You are learning what cannot hold you. You are learning what deserves your trust. You are learning the difference between comfort and security. Comfort fades when pressure comes. Security remains because it is rooted in me. I know how easily you equate stability with silence. You think that when things are quiet, all is well. But silence can hide weakness. Shaking brings honesty. It exposes what was never meant to support you. This exposure is mercy, not cruelty. Do not measure your safety by how calm things appear. Measure it by where you stand. If you stand with me, you are secure even when everything else trembles. I am not shaken by cultural shifts, moral confusion, or human failure. I remain the same. I see how you fear being swept away by change. Change feels uncontrollable. Yet I remain sovereign over change. I am not reacting to it. I am governing through it. When you trust me, change does not have authority over your peace. Standing firm does not mean resisting every change. It means discerning what aligns with truth and what does not. Some things must change. Some things must fall. What remains will be stronger for having been tested. I know how shaking reveals hidden fears. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty. Bring these fears to me. They do not disqualify you. They remind you of your need for me. I am not asking you to be fearless. I am asking you to be anchored. Courage grows when you know where you stand, when you know who holds you. You may feel pressure to move quickly, to choose sides, to react. But haste rarely produces wisdom. Stand still long enough to remember who I am. My presence steadies your decisions. I see how the shaking around you tempts you to withdraw. You want to protect yourself by disengaging, but withdrawal is not always safety. Sometimes it isolates you from strength. Sometimes standing firm means remaining present, faithful, and attentive. I am your refuge not because I remove every storm, but because I remain unmoved by them. Refuge does not eliminate danger. It provides shelter within it. You do not need to predict how everything will turn out to stand firm today. You only need to trust me now. Faithfulness is lived one moment at a time. I see how shaking refines your priorities. What once felt urgent loses its grip. What truly matters becomes clear. This clarity is a gift. I am not surprised by what is failing. I am not threatened by what is ending. I am preparing you to stand on what will not pass away. Standing firm does not mean clinging to the past. It means holding to truth regardless of season. Truth remains relevant even when culture shifts. I know how instability tests your patience. You want resolution. You want clarity. Yet patience allows truth to emerge without distortion. I see how standing firm shapes your character. You become steadier, less reactive, more discerning. Strength grows quietly. I am teaching you to trust my permanence over temporary structures. What I establish cannot be shaken. You may feel small in the face of widespread instability, but size does not determine strength. Roots do. Deep roots remain when storms pass. I am your foundation, not an idea, not a concept, a presence, a relationship. When you stand in me, you stand securely. Let the shaking reveal what cannot last. Let it drive you deeper, not farther. I am not asking you to escape. I am inviting you to stand. This day begins not with fear of collapse, but with confidence in me. Lift your eyes. Set your heart. Stand firm. I am with you. I see injustice with perfect clarity, even when it hides behind respectability, influence, or tradition. I am not confused by appearances, and I am not persuaded by popularity. What is wrong does not become right because many agree with it, and what is true does not lose its authority because few defend it. When foundations shake, injustice often reveals itself more boldly, assuming chaos will cover its tracks. But chaos does not blind me, it sharpens my judgment. You may look around and feel overwhelmed by what seems tolerated, excused, normalized. You see systems bending truth, voices twisting facts, power protecting itself at the expense of the vulnerable. You wonder how righteousness can survive in such conditions. Hear me clearly, righteousness is not sustained by consensus. It is sustained by truth, and truth answers to me. I judge injustice not only by what it does, but by what it produces. I see the fear it spreads, the dignity it erodes, the silence it enforces. I weigh consequences as carefully as actions. No harm is isolated, no lie is harmless. What injures one affects many, and I account for it fully. You may assume that because injustice persists, it has escaped accountability. That is not so. Persistence does not equal permanence. I allow seasons not to excuse wrongdoing, but to expose it completely. Injustice often depends on concealment and confusion. Time removes both. What relies on hiding cannot endure light. I know how deeply unsettling it is when injustice appears organized and protected. You see it embedded in policies, defended by authority, shielded by complexity. You feel small against it. But size does not determine righteousness. Influence does not equal innocence. I am not intimidated by systems, and I am not delayed by complexity. I dismantle carefully what was constructed carefully. I judge with precision, not impulse. Impulsive judgment satisfies anger but rarely restores order. I restore order by addressing roots, not just symptoms. I expose motives, unravel alliances, and weaken structures from within. When correction comes, it is thorough, leaving no foundation for repetition. You may want me to act immediately, to stop wrong before it spreads further. Your desire reflects compassion, but immediate interruption can sometimes harden what should be exposed. When injustice is allowed to mature, it reveals its true nature. Pride becomes reckless. Deception contradicts itself. What once hid behind plausibility collapses under scrutiny. I see how injustice tests your trust. You ask whether integrity still matters when dishonesty seems rewarded. It does. Integrity outlasts advantage. What is gained through manipulation cannot sustain itself. What is built without truth will eventually require force to maintain, and force reveals weakness. You may fear that righteousness is fragile. It is not. Righteousness is patient. It does not need urgency to survive. It does not need noise to stand. It waits because it knows judgment will arrive with clarity. I see how injustice often mocks patience. It interprets waiting as weakness. But patience guided by truth is strength. It allows justice to land without confusion, without collateral harm, without reversal. You may wonder why I do not intervene sooner for the sake of those who suffer. I am attentive to the suffering. I do not minimize it. I store every cry. I weigh every tear. My justice seeks not only to stop harm, but to heal what harm has broken. Healing requires more than interruption. It requires restoration. I see how injustice damages trust within communities. Fear replaces cooperation. Silence replaces honesty. People withdraw to protect themselves. I address this damage as part of my judgment. Justice is incomplete if it punishes wrong, but leaves fear intact. I know how injustice tempts you to respond with bitterness. Bitterness feels like strength, but it corrodes discernment. I protect your heart by carrying judgment myself. You are not required to poison yourself to prove that wrong matters. I see how injustice thrives on intimidation. It counts on fear to keep people quiet. I weaken intimidation gradually by restoring courage. Where trust is placed in me, courage spreads quietly. When courage grows, injustice loses control without noticing. You may think injustice is winning because it moves faster. Speed does not equal authority. Speed often signals fear of exposure. Truth does not hurry. It stands. I judge those who misuse power more strictly than those who lack it. Authority entrusted without righteousness accelerates accountability. No position shields wrongdoing from me. You may look for visible signs of justice, public reversals, loud consequences, dramatic exposure. Sometimes these come. Often they follow quieter work you never saw. Plans dissolved. Opportunities removed. Influence diminished. Harm prevented before it reached you. Absence of disaster is often evidence of judgment at work. I see how injustice often rewrites narratives to justify itself. It calls exploitation efficiency. It calls cruelty necessity. It calls resistance disorder. I expose these distortions. Lies contradict themselves eventually. When they do, truth requires little effort to stand. I know how exhausting it is to remain faithful while wrong persists. Wariness tempts you to disengage. Do not confuse disengagement with wisdom. Wisdom remains present without surrendering peace. I see how injustice isolates its victims. It convinces them they are unseen. I see them. Recognition is the beginning of justice. No one harmed is forgotten. I judge injustice in stages so that correction is lasting. Awareness brings light. Exposure brings clarity. Weakening brings collapse. Restoration brings healing. Each stage serves a purpose. Skipping stages creates instability. You may feel that justice is slow because you measure it by moments. I measure it by outcomes. I do not rush what must be thorough. I know how injustice tries to recruit you into compromise. It offers relief at the cost of integrity. Resist this. Justice achieved through compromise plants seeds of future harm. I see how injustice often overreaches when it believes itself secure. Pride grows careless. Arrogance becomes visible. This exposure accelerates judgment. I know how waiting tests faith. Faith that endures waiting becomes resilient. It does not collapse under pressure. I see how injustice fractures unity. Fear divides. Truth reunites. My judgment restores cohesion by removing what corrupted trust. I know how injustice attempts to erase memory. Memory is not lost with me. Every act remains accounted for. I judge not only to punish, but to prevent repetition. Prevention is mercy for what comes next. You may ask whether righteousness truly governs when wrong seems entrenched. It does. What contradicts truth cannot endure indefinitely. I see how justice protects the vulnerable first. Their cries reach me quickly. Their worth is not measured by visibility. I know how injustice depends on despair to survive. Despair convinces you nothing will change. I counter despair with certainty. Justice will stand. I see how endurance is required while justice unfolds. Endurance is not passivity. It is faith that remains active without panic. I know how injustice fears light. I increase light gradually until concealment fails. I see how justice does not require your hatred. Hatred clouds judgment. Trust clarifies it. I know how justice restores hope when outcomes realign with truth. I see how justice affirms that righteousness governs reality, not chaos. I know how justice steadies you even before resolution appears. I see how justice honors those who remained faithful during waiting. I know how justice prevails not because injustice weakens, but because truth remains. I see how justice secures what follows. I know how justice moves with precision and perfect timing, correcting what is wrong, protecting what is vulnerable, restoring what was damaged, and establishing order that does not rely on fear or force. As you continue to stand firm while foundations shake, trusting that nothing built on falsehood will endure, nothing hidden will remain concealed, and nothing aligned against truth will outlast the moment I choose to act with authority, wisdom, and righteousness. When you choose to trust me while everything around you trembles, you are not denying reality. You are anchoring yourself in truth. Foundations shake to reveal what cannot support you, but trust reveals what can hold you steady. Fear urges you to run, to abandon your place, to believe that standing firm is foolish. Yet I tell you that firmness rooted in me is not stubbornness, it is wisdom. When you trust me, you do not become rigid, you become grounded. I know how unsettling it feels when familiar structures no longer provide security. You relied on systems, routines, relationships, expectations, and suddenly they shift beneath your feet. Fear whispers that collapse is inevitable and that survival depends on speed. But speed driven by fear rarely leads to safety. Trust slows you down just enough to recognize where true stability lies. Standing firm does not mean pretending you are unafraid. It means choosing not to be ruled by fear. Fear exaggerates danger and minimizes strength. Trust corrects this distortion. Trust reminds you that I am present, attentive, and unshaken. When you stand in trust, you borrow strength from my permanence rather than from temporary structures. You may think standing firm requires constant effort, like bracing against a storm with sheer willpower. But trust does not exhaust you the way fear does. Fear tightens muscles and clouds judgment. Trust relaxes your grip and sharpens your sight. You stand firm not because you strain, but because you are supported. I see how shaking tempts you to compromise. You are pressured to soften convictions, to adjust truth, to remain silent where integrity calls for courage. You fear losing security if you remain upright. Yet security gained through compromise is fragile. It cannot withstand further pressure. Trusting me allows you to remain whole even when the cost feels high. Standing firm is often quiet. It does not announce itself with arguments or displays of power. It looks like consistency when inconsistency would be easier. It looks like patience when haste is applauded. It looks like integrity when shortcuts promise relief. This quiet firmness is not weakness. It is strength that does not need validation. I know how fear convinces you that standing still means falling behind. But trust teaches you that not all movement is progress. Sometimes remaining where you are, grounded in truth, is the most forward motion possible. When foundations shake, frantic movement can pull you into collapse. Stillness rooted in trust preserves balance. You may wonder whether standing firm isolates you. When others panic or flee, remaining steady can feel lonely. Yet you are not alone. I stand with you. And those who seek stability will recognize it in you. Steadiness attracts trust. Calm becomes refuge for others. Standing firm does not mean resisting every change. Trust helps you discern what must change and what must remain. Some foundations shake because they were never meant to endure. Trust allows you to release what is failing without losing yourself. You are not required to cling to what cannot last. I see how shaking reveals priorities. What once seemed essential loses urgency. What truly matters becomes clear. Trust helps you recognize this clarity without panic. You begin to invest your energy wisely, rather than scattering it in reaction to fear. You may fear that standing firm will make you vulnerable. Yet vulnerability rooted in trust is not exposure. It is openness to strength beyond yourself. When you stand firm in me, you are not exposed to harm. You are positioned under care. Standing firm also means resisting the urge to despair. Despair tells you that nothing matters because everything is unstable. Trust tells you that meaning does not disappear when circumstances change. Meaning is anchored in purpose, not in predictability. I know how shaking can make you question whether truth still has power. Lies seem loud. Confusion spreads quickly. But truth does not lose authority because it is challenged. It remains effective even when resisted. Standing firm aligns you with what endures. Trust allows you to face uncertainty without panic. You do not need full clarity to remain steady. You only need confidence in who holds you. When you trust me, uncertainty becomes a space for growth, rather than a threat to survival. Standing firm reshapes your posture. You no longer crouch beneath fear. You stand upright not in pride, but in assurance. This posture affects how you speak, how you listen, how you decide. Calm confidence replaces anxious urgency. You may feel pressure to defend yourself constantly when foundations shake. Accusations rise. Blame shifts. Trust frees you from endless self-defense. You do not need to explain yourself into safety. I am your refuge. Standing firm does not mean ignoring pain. Pain is real. Loss is real. Change is real. Trust allows you to acknowledge these realities without letting them define you. You grieve without collapsing. You adapt without surrendering integrity. I see how fear urges you to escape discomfort at any cost. Trust invites you to remain present and attentive. Presence allows wisdom to form. Wisdom protects you from decisions driven by panic. Standing firm builds endurance. Endurance is not flashy. It grows quietly as you choose faithfulness again and again. Endurance allows you to remain steady over time, not just in moments of intensity. You may think standing firm requires certainty. It does not. It requires trust. Certainty depends on information. Trust depends on relationship. Relationship sustains you when information is incomplete. Standing firm also protects your heart. When everything shakes, bitterness tempts you. Cynicism offers false safety. Trust keeps your heart soft without making it fragile. Softness rooted in trust resists corrosion. I see how shaking reveals hidden fears. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being wrong. Bring these fears to me. They do not disqualify you. They remind you of your dependence. Standing firm allows you to remain generous when scarcity threatens. You do not hoard energy, kindness, or compassion. Trust assures you that provision does not end when circumstances change. You may worry that standing firm means missing opportunities. But not every opportunity is meant to be seized. Trust sharpens discernment. You recognize what aligns with truth and what distracts from it. Standing firm also stabilizes your inner world. Thoughts slow, emotions settle. You respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Calm becomes your strength. I know how shaking tempts you to disengage completely. You want to protect yourself by withdrawing. Yet withdrawal can isolate you from support and clarity. Standing firm often means staying engaged without being consumed. Standing firm is an act of trust repeated daily. It is not a single decision but a posture. Each day you choose where to place your weight. Each day you decide what will hold you. Trust allows you to accept that some questions will remain unanswered for now. You do not demand resolution to remain faithful. You live well within uncertainty. Standing firm also prepares you for future responsibility. Those who can remain steady under pressure are entrusted with greater influence. Trust forms leaders who do not panic. You may think standing firm is passive. It is not. It requires courage to remain when fleeing would feel safer. Courage rooted in trust does not seek attention. It simply remains. Standing firm teaches you to value depth over speed. Depth sustains you when surface solutions fail. Trust grows roots that storms cannot uproot. I see how standing firm reshapes your identity. You no longer define yourself by what collapses around you. You define yourself by what holds you. Trust also allows you to rest even when resolution has not arrived. Rest is not denial. It is confidence that you are not responsible for holding everything together. Standing firm makes you attentive to my presence. You notice guidance more clearly when you are not frantic. Trust sharpens awareness. You may feel that standing firm costs you comfort. It does, but it grants you peace. Comfort is temporary. Peace endures. Standing firm allows you to live authentically. You do not adjust yourself to every shift in opinion or pressure. You remain aligned with truth. I know how foundation shaking can feel like betrayal. You trusted something that failed you. Trusting me does not mean ignoring that pain. It means allowing that pain to redirect your trust toward what cannot fail. Standing firm also restores hope. Hope rooted in trust does not collapse when circumstances change. It adapts and endures. You may feel small amid widespread instability. But strength is not measured by scale. It is measured by anchoring. A deeply rooted life remains even when towering structures fall. Standing firm honors me not through performance, but through trust. Trust is the quiet declaration that I am enough. As you trust me, fear loses authority. Decisions become clearer. Actions become steadier. You move through the day without being driven by urgency. Standing firm does not guarantee ease. It guarantees grounding. Grounding allows you to navigate difficulty without losing yourself. Trust allows you to witness shaking without becoming shaken. You observe change without being overtaken by it. Standing firm transforms instability into refinement. What shakes around you strengthens what is within you. You do not need to know how everything will turn out to stand firm today. You only need to know where you stand now. Trust anchors you when foundations tremble. Fear tells you to run. Trust tells you to stand. And when you stand in me, you remain secure even as everything else shifts. Rooted in truth that does not crumble. Held by strength that does not weaken. Guided by wisdom that does not panic. Standing firm with confidence and peace as the world around you shakes and changes. Grounded in trust that carries you forward steadily, faithfully, and without fear into whatever this day brings.